February 1st has come and gone. That means changes to the SNAP program.
We're going to let you know what that means for you and for your family and your neighbors next on The Undercurrent.
Greetings and salutations.
Uncle Warren, it was so fun. It was so fun. Uncle Warren was at my birthday party. We got to hang out.
I was. Yes, I was alive and everything. Sort of.
We had wine.
There was a lot of whining going on.
Yes. Ha, ha, ha. And we had cheese and we had hummus and all kinds of good stuff.
And chicken wings. Our buddy Ed brought the chicken wings, and yes, it was good. Yeah,
those were yummy too. Everybody loved those. Next year, I'm taking the hint. I'll have some chicken wings.
It was yeah, it's nice to have a little variety there. Those were from Mariano's, I believe. Those
they do a good job.
I believe that. Yeah, that's where they were from. Yes, Mariano's, good stuff. Not a plug, just saying. Just making a truism there. So yeah, did you have a good time?
I had a great time. It was great being back in the city. Looking forward to getting back real soon and hanging out with y'all. It was a fun time. It was wonderful. I couldn't have had a better birthday.
I think you took the cold weather with you because now it's all the snow is starting to melt now. So we're starting to see the ground again.
It was in the 70s yesterday or something like that. I mean, it was ridiculously warm down here. And that today's a little bit cooler, but
yeah, this winter, I want to say the last couple winters here were kind of mild in comparison. We had snowfalls, but this winter has been just like snow. I guess it's just a regular Chicago winter, but we got down to some single digits, even below zero at one point.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there was some days when I was there where it was just so cold. I walked 7 miles though on one of those very cold days.
That's probably the best time to do that. Probably not when it's like sub-zero, but I would say like if you want to get your core temperature up and get a nice sweat while you're freezing to death, that's probably the best way to do it.
It was. I just felt like walking. I hadn't been in my city. I haven't been really spent a lot of time in my city since I left for Arkansas. And hey, 7 miles and freezing temperatures. It was kind of fun being able to poke in old places, see old streets and businesses and that sort of thing. It was great.
Yeah, and Chicago looks nice during the winter anyway. It wears the winter well, I would say. So well, we got who do we got here? We got Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show in the chat. Good to see you. Just a reminder, we are broadcasting on YouTube and Rumble and on Facebook and on Instagram. So you have plenty of choices to get your up-to-date news here as we get started with the Riptide here. And wow, a lot of this Epstein release is starting to hit home now. We were seeing some things overseas, especially in the UK, where people that were dealing with Epstein are starting to get called out for it, and even some people getting almost released from their jobs. So and one person that may lose his job here in the United States is the U.S. Commerce Secretary, as Lutnick downplays Epstein ties amid resignation calls. Is he one of a domino? We'll see. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has played down his connection to child sex abuser Jeffrey Epstein after newly released emails shared details about their interactions. Facing calls for his resignation, Lutnick told a Senate committee yesterday that he barely knew Epstein. That seems to be a common theme. I've heard the name Epstein. I don't know if this is the actual person. Yeah, so although emails appear to contradict his earlier accounts of the relationship, as they usually do. I did not have any relationship with him. I barely had anything to do with that person, Letnick said. The Commerce Secretary is the latest member of the political and financial elite to face pressure over relations with the disgraced financier. Donald Trump's administration has come under particular scrutiny for its handling of government files related to Epstein and the president's own years-long relationship with the convicted sex offender. During yesterday's hearing, lawmakers pressed Letnick about statements he made on a podcast last year, explaining that he had pledged to never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again after he and Epstein met in 2005. Letnick said he made the decision after Epstein showed him and his wife a massage table featured prominently in his residence and made sexually suggestive comments about it. But recently released emails suggest that Letnick may have visited Epstein's private island for a lunch meeting. You go to a private island for lunch, huh? In 2012, and may have met on other occasions as well. You led people to believe that you had cut off all contact with Epstein after the 2005 encounter you and your wife had in his apartment, according to Senator Chris Van Hollen, who told Letnick at the committee hearing. But as I'm sure you know, the Epstein files show a very different record of interaction. Letnick, however, downplayed his interactions with Epstein and emphasized that nothing untoward, that's a nice word to throw in there, happened in the 2012 encounter. I know, and my wife knows, that I have done absolutely nothing wrong in any possible regard, Letnick said. The apparent contradiction emerged after the Department of Justice released 3 million pages of Epstein-related records on January 30th in an attempt to satisfy the requirements of the Bipartisan Epstein Files Transparency Act, which they've yet to fulfill. As of this writing, as they say, more dominoes in the Epstein fallout. I think more should more please, big time more please. We need as much transparency on this as possible.
Yeah, I think that this is your parents and grandparents were right when they told you to be careful about the company you keep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and again, my position on this is that a lot of these folks, people at a certain income level, people tend to associate with people at their own income level. And it's not unusual for the rich and the powerful to hang out with each other, be introduced to each other. And I'm quite sure there were plenty of situations where these folks, you know, just they met, they had mutual friends, they hung out or whatnot. But there's a taint that can happen when you've got somebody who has engaged in, you know, horrific activities, and now everybody is learning that lesson really quick.
Yeah, I don't think some of these people that had any dealings with Epstein knew how much documentation was out there regarding his relations with people, whether benign or intimate. But they're starting to learn.
They are.
They're learning. They're a bunch of learners, that's for sure. Meanwhile, a little bit of flack at the Canadian border. The moose. No, it's not the moose. Trump threatens to block U.S.-Canada bridge over compensation demands. Of course, there's always some sort of demand. Trump has escalated tensions with Canada by threatening to prevent the opening of a major cross-border infrastructure project until Washington receives, quote, adequate compensation and potentially half ownership of the asset. In a Truth Social post on Monday, Trump announced he would block the Gordie Howe International Bridge, Gordie Howe being a famous hockey player up there, connecting Detroit and Windsor, Ontario, from opening unless, quote, the U.S. is fully compensated for everything we have given them, unquote. The president demanded immediate negotiations, asserting that the U.S. should own perhaps at least one half of this asset, given its contribution to the project. The Gordie Howe International Bridge, nearing completion after years of construction, has been entirely financed by the Canadian federal government at an estimated cost of 6.4 billion Canadian dollars. Ottawa plans to recover these costs through future bridge tolls collected from users of what will become a critical trade artery, handling tens of billions in annual Canada-U.S. commerce. Trump's grievances center on a waiver granted during the Obama administration that exempted the project from Buy American requirements, allowing Canada to proceed without mandating U.S. steel or other U.S. materials. The president said this allows Canada to take advantage of America while the U.S. receives absolutely nothing, even though they footed the bill themselves. So the bridge dispute represents the latest salvo in deteriorating U.S.-Canada relations under Trump's second term. Excuse me. Trump recently threatened 100% tariffs on Canadian goods if Ottawa proceeded with a trade agreement with China, a deal that exchanged canola sales for electric vehicle import quotas. Trump has also criticized Canadian dairy tariffs as unacceptable and threatening to American farmers, which it just sounds like, I'm a scammer. Let me get in on this deal that you totally paid for, Canada.
It sounds like a shakedown racket. I mean, it's a racket. It's a racket at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's they paid for the bridge themselves, right? Yeah. And so Trump's thinking is, we're going to have probably more going into Canada that's coming out of Canada, so we should own half of it, which is just ridiculous nonsense. It's just him just trying to squeeze as much money out of people as he can. I mean, he's a cheapskate anyway. He told NATO countries that they're going to have to, pony up more dough for their own defense, which is all well and good. But, when the United States has been that umbrella for them for decades, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? It's just like the one thing after another with him. He's just like this, when it comes to the defense, though, he's willing to spend $1 trillion and a half, but for other stuff like this, he's either like cheap or he's scheming, and this just sounds like another one of his schemes. So, speaking of schemes, landlords in New York have the biggest schemes of all when it comes to ripping off people. That's for sure. So targeting bad landlords, Mamdani, the mayor there, invites New Yorkers to testify at rental ripoff hearings. So at least, I don't know how good this is going to be, but at least it gives people a voice. So after delivering on his promise of universal child care for New York families, launching a process to ramp up construction of affordable housing, and personally seeing to snow removal after a major storm and the repair of a road hazard that's long plagued cyclists, New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani on Tuesday made strides toward fulfilling another campaign pledge, cracking down on bad landlords. The effort will involve active participation from residents across the city, whom Mamdani invited to testify at rental ripoff hearings set to begin later this month in the 5 boroughs. You can't fight for tenants without listening to them first. That's why we're launching rental ripoff hearings in all 5 boroughs, bringing together renters to speak directly about what they're facing, from hidden fees to broken tiles and unresponsive landlords. Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, said in a statement on social media. Mamdani said the hearings will give New Yorkers a chance to tell the city exactly what your landlord's been getting away with, and will help his government to enact real policy changes. People who testify will have the opportunity to meet one-on-one with officials from City Hall, including commissioners from the city's housing and consumer protection agencies, to help shape future policy, according to the BK Reader. The city website urges residents to testify about challenges, including getting issues in their homes addressed, and rental junk fees, like fees for certain amenities, pet services, and rental payment systems. The dates of the hearings were announced 5 weeks after Mamdani signed Executive Order 08, which stipulates that city agencies will publish a report 90 days after the final hearing, scheduled for April 7th in Staten Island, with recommendations for policy changes and action plans. Kenny Burgos, CEO of the New York Apartment Association, which represents apartment building owners and property managers, quickly denounced the planned hearings as show trials and a distraction. Yes, I'm sure the property owners do not want to hear all the gripes that they're going to hear. Burgos claimed that the NYAA believes that renters with complaints should have their voices heard, but suggested landlords have little ability to respond to complaints because thousands of buildings are being defunded by the government through overtaxation, nonsensical rent laws, and failing city agencies. Yes, throwing it back at the city. Mamdani has argued that the problem tenants deal with every day need to become real problems for landlords too, and has called for the doubling of fines for hazardous housing violation. What tenants share at these hearings won't lead to empty promises, said Mamdani on Tuesday. Their testimony will guide our work and help shape the policies we advance to build a city New Yorkers can afford to call their home. That is going to be a tall order for sure. And the pandemic didn't really do anybody any favors with that too, as people were abandoning their leases because they couldn't stay open, right?
Yeah.
And there were restrictions, especially for like restaurants and front facing places where people had to wear masks. They had to be vaccinated, the whole 9 yards. So there were, and that's just one thing, but this has been an ongoing thing where, they'll blame the city for high property taxes in order to justify jacking up these rents. But in reality, that's just one thing that's only one thing that's legitimate. The rest of this is just pure greed and arrogance by these landlords.
Yeah, I think that, one problem is that oftentimes a response to very strict regulations for landlords is that it becomes that much harder for somebody to get into housing. Because what will often happen is the landlords, okay, they're under a lot of restrictions, they will up the qualifications for renters. And that leads to a situation where people simply cannot find housing or in an area because they don't have the credit record, or they have a criminal background, or they had a problem with a previous landlord or something like that, or they're stuck, having to move outside of that city or that area, or they're doubling up. We're going to talk about that later on in the show when we talk about how homelessness is not being quantified in the way it needs to be. So I think that there is that concern as well. And I think that what happens is that if you have landlords that are corporations, that their main business is not providing housing, they are not even particularly invested in their buildings, but they're looking just for ways to extract as much money out of each possible tenant, including charging extra fees to pay on your rent online and things like that. That's what they were talking about with these junk fees. That's its own set of problems. When you don't have landlords who actually are involved with their properties and involved with their buildings, there's a need for a complete overhaul as to how we think about housing in this country. I have actually no problem with it. Some people don't want to own a building. They don't want to own their homes. They would prefer to rent. There's a lot of reasons why renting makes a lot more sense for people. But when you have it in a situation where people are trying to extract as much money per head, per person, you're going to see junk fees. You're going to see conflict, an adversarial relationship between people who need housing and the people who own it. And something's got to give here.
Yeah, and in New York particularly, it's a mixed bag of crazy with the New York City Housing Authority, NYCHA. In order to get into just public housing is a lottery process that some people can wait on a list, 5-10 years, right, and still not get in because there's no available. It's not even like it's affordable housing. It's housing in general. When you live in a city that also, on Billionaires Row, where you have these towering apartment buildings that are just there as investment opportunities. There's not even, not those buildings aren't even half full of people, right? So and in turn, when that limits the number of housing available, of course, that means the demand is way up, and that means the prices are going up as well. And I mean, I know some mom and pop landlords that didn't adhere to that were keeping their prices low as they could in order to provide housing for people. But those people are a unicorn compared to the rest of the city. So we'll keep an eye on that and see how that happens. And at the very least, it gives at least people get their day in front of city city officials and complain, instead of like sending strongly worded letters and emails that they know probably aren't going to be read anyway. So we'll see how that goes.
Uncle Warren, we got a bunch of folks who are coming into the chat too. I'd like to say hello to our friends.
Please do.
We have got CBC voter here. We got Willie Bragg in the house. We got Chuck. We've got Ilan Jimerson, I know, has been checking, is here. We've got some folks over on Instagram. Reminding my folks on Instagram, we don't get served your chats in here, so there could be a delay in responding to a question or a concern. And if you want, head on over to YouTube and go into the Undercurrent channel, and you can get your questions and comments posted right away.
Yeah, we really appreciate everybody tuning in today, and if you're tuning in the future too, as well. So let's head out west to old El Paso.
Okay, this is weird, Uncle Warren. This is just plain weird.
Okay, let's get to it. So the FAA lifts El Paso airspace closure after cartel drone breach. The FAA has lifted the closure on the airspace in El Paso, and all flights will resume as normal after the FAA has grounded all flights to and from El Paso on Tuesday night. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy confirmed the airspace closure was due to a drone breach. Duffy said the FAA and the Department of War acted swiftly to address the cartel drone incursion. So this is his tweet right here. The FAA and DOW acted swiftly to address a cartel drone incursion. The threat has been neutralized, and there's no danger to commercial travel in the region. The restrictions have been lifted, and normal flights are resuming. According to CNN, Mexican cartel drones breached U.S. airspace. An administration official told CNN, which triggered a temporary airspace closure over El Paso. The airspace closure was prompted by a U.S. military operation related to drug cartels, according to two sources briefed on the matter. The Department of War took action to disable the drones, the official told CNN. The FAA and Department of War have determined there is no threat to commercial travel. The FAA has issued a temporary flight restriction, halting all flights to and from El Paso, including commercial, cargo, and general aviation. The original restriction was effective from February 10th, which is yesterday, at 11:30 p.m. Eastern to February 20th at 11:30 p.m. That's Central Time, I believe. I think El Paso Central Time. But it has since been lifted. So this was the statement on behalf of the El Paso International Airport. The FAA on short notice issued a temporary flight restriction halting all flights to and from El Paso and our neighboring community, Santa Teresa, New Mexico. The restriction prohibits all aircraft operations, including commercial cargo and general aviation. And there's the effective times. We just said that's been lifted. Airport staff has reached out to the FAA, and we are pending additional guidance. In the meanwhile, commercial airlines operating out of El Paso are being informed of the restriction, which appears to be security related. So travelers are encouraged to contact their airlines to get the latest information on their flight status. And then they gave a press conference there.
This was so weird. Okay. I get up this morning. I mean, I'm used to waking up to strange news. And I wake up and I find out that for reasons, and they were not initially giving any reasons for this, that the airport in El Paso, Texas, which El Paso has something like 700,000 residents, was being shut down for 10 days in the airspace. And I'm sitting there saying, what the heck? And apparently airport workers were wandering around trying to figure out what was going on. They'd stopped all the flights. The FAA wasn't saying anything. So I'm getting everything set up in our show notes with the updates and the stories, and then they flip-flopped. And, this administration, I mean, granted, they're completely incompetent, but it's the whole whiplash thing. That's quite something. I mean, they're saying closed for 10 days, which had everybody in an uproar, because what that'll do for the economy is a problem. It's a real problem for the economy. And then all of a sudden, everything's back to normal. The Department of War has taken care of matters.
Well, apparently there's been another boat blowing up thing we're going to get to later. So maybe these are just like distractions to where it's like, see, there really is a cartel. They got drones, and
could very well be. It could very well be, but it was really, really strange. I was everywhere, I was everywhere, just trying to figure out what was happening, trying to find authoritative sources that we didn't have a paywall. And I'm like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah, it just seems like much ado about nothing. I mean, these airports will tend to shut down temporarily whenever there's like illegal drones in the area of airports, but it just seems like they're trying to upplay this as some sort of like invasion of the drug cartels, when it may not even been a drug cartel plane, or what is it? What are they called?
Drone.
What are we called? Drone.
Drone. I don't even know, because initially they weren't telling anybody anything. Right. And then it went closed for 10 days. And it's like, well, why 10 days? And then, oopsie daisy, we're back. So again, is this manufactured whiplash? Is this incompetence? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, there's one distraction after another with this crew. So, it's probably good rule of thumb to just assume that it is a distraction until you get some pertinent information that tells you otherwise. And a lot of times you don't get that pertinent information.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, Occam's razor, it is what it is. So the president of Israel visited Australia, and some people were not very keen on that. So, of course, the cops, crackheads, how about that? Dozens arrested in Australia during violent police crackdown on anti-genocide protests. So we see here democracy in action right there. The inaction being one word, of course. Australian police violently cracked down on anti-genocide protests in Sydney on Monday, sparked by the visit of the Israeli president arresting dozens and critically injuring several protesters. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered outside Surrey Hills Police Station in response to the violence at a rally organized by the Palestine Action Group after police sealed off the perimeter of nearby Harmony Park following that's a little ironic, following clashes the previous evening. As many as 30 protests were planned throughout the country ahead of Herzog's visit. That's the president there. The largest of them was held outside Sydney Town Hall, where thousands of protesters clashed with police forces, who then, of course, on cue, violently dispersed the crowd using pepper spray, tear gas, and batons. 10 police officers were injured in the clashes, with a total of 27 arrests made in Sydney, including 10 people charged with assaulting police and 17 charged with failing to comply with orders to disperse and related offenses. During the crackdown, a 69-year-old woman identified as Jan Al-Hafni was hospitalized with 4 fractured vertebrae after a police officer pushed her very violently and without warning during the protest. 69-year-old woman. Speaking from her hospital bed, she said, "I straight away knew I'd hurt my back," adding that other protesters were pushed on top of her as she lay on the ground, leaving her fearing a stampede or suffocation, before an officer grabbed one arm and he yanked me up onto my feet, like really severely, and that was excruciating. New South Wales Greens MP Abigail Boyd was also assaulted by police officers despite identifying herself to them as a member of parliament, hence MP.
Yeah.
Footage from the protest showed police forcibly dispersing a group of Muslims while they were praying in the street, prompting the Australian National Imams Council, the ANIC, to issue a statement condemning the conduct as shocking, deeply disturbing, and entirely unacceptable. PAG condemned the police response as sickening state violence and brutal repression of a peaceful demonstration, adding to sharp criticism over the handling of dissent during Israeli President Isaac Herzog's visit to Australia. Protesters also called for the resignation of New South Wales Premier Chris Minns and demanded all charges against demonstrators be dropped as chants against the government echoed outside the police station. So if you thought this was just an all-American thing, beating up on protesters, well, no, our friends across the pond and down under like to do the same things as well. Democracy, right?
Former penal colonies, right?
Yeah. It's yeah, exactly. I guess they have that prison mentality there of just beating up on people. They're just so used to doing that. But I mean, it was just so the president of Israel comes there and the people protest, right? So they're not violent protests. And still they start cracking heads because let's face it, the Australian government is a big time cuck to Israel, and they don't want the wrath of the United States, their girlfriend, on them as well. So, but the people in Australia are not having this at all.
No, they're not. And I think people around the world are not having it. This is happening a lot.
Yeah, it's as the violence grows, so does the outrage. And it seems kind of cyclical, though. The more outrage there is, the more violence there is, and the more violence there is, there's more outrage, and so on and so on. But the people who have had enough of people who are finally standing up to this, we need more. We need more of it, right? Meanwhile, in the UK and the US, this is not very shocking news at all, really. US, UK hit record lows in global corruption index.
Imagine that.
The United States corrupt? What?
The UK corrupt? Yes.
What? That's some crazy talk. So the UK and US have dropped to their lowest ever positions in a global corruption index, reflecting a dramatic erosion of democratic institutions through political donations, cash for access schemes, and state targeting of campaigners and journalists. The Corruption Perceptions Index, the CPI, compiled by Transparency International, ranks the 182 countries based on expert and business assessments of public sector corruption. Denmark topped the 2025 rankings with the lowest corruption levels. This is the same people that own Greenland, by the way, while South Sudan ranked last alongside Somalia. The report identified an overall global decline, with 50 countries recording worse scores compared to 31 that improved. Established democracies showed particularly troubling backsliding. Maybe they weren't democracies in the first place, with the organization warning that developments during Trump's presidency and revelations from the Epstein files could accelerate further deterioration. Britain has steadily fallen down the rankings since 2015, dropping from 7th place to 20th. I can't believe they were that high at 7th, to be honest with you, to 20th last year with a score of 70 out of 100, down from 71 the previous year. According to Transparency International, the decline stems from concerns surrounding both major parties that contested the 2024 general election. Record campaign spending has supercharged reliance on wealthy backers, with the Conservatives accepting £15 million from a single donor, businessman Frank Hester, in under 12 months. The Guardian's revelation that Hester had made racist and sexist remarks prompted calls for the party to return the funds. Let me guess, they didn't return funds. The report also referenced potential donations from Elon Musk, the world's richest person, who reportedly considered giving $100 million to Reform UK. Labour faced scrutiny after its largest donor, Wahid Ali, received privileged access to number 10. That would be number 10 Downing Street, I believe, while political appointments for party donors drew additional criticism. Transparency International warned the UK risks remaining mired in scandal due to revelations about Labour grandee Peter Mandelson's relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And the U.S. fell from 28th to 29th. Wow, only one spot. That's crazy. Overtaken by Lithuania with its lowest ever score of 64. The survey data was collected during 2025. It didn't fully capture events from Trump's second presidency, so that's probably going to make that number go down even more. They highlighted concerning trends, including the use of public office to target and restrict independent voices such as NGOs and journalists. The normalization of conflicted and transactional politics, the politicization of prosecutorial decision-making, and actions that undermine judicial judicial independence. So, like I said, not shocking that they dropped. I'm shocked that they weren't even further down on the list.
Yeah, and I think they pointed out, it's not taking into consideration some of the most recent shenanigans. So this is going to be very interesting next year.
Yeah. It's well, I mean, and then maybe, considering the fact that the United States murdered 2 of its citizens with their own Gestapo there, that's probably gonna knock it down.
The whole kidnapping heads of state in other areas and the summary execution of fishermen and that sort of thing.
Yeah, those too. Yeah. It's like I said, I'm just shocked that those numbers are as high as they are. Like I said, I thought they would be way lower. So that's a look at our top stories for this week. And let us get to, of course, catch of the day. And the catch of the day, of course, February 1st, SNAP restrictions went into effect.
And it was so, this was happening. We knew that this was happening. And yet, I didn't even really recognize what was happening until after the first had hit and the restrictions got put into place. I think there was just so much going on. We were distracted by so many other things that a whole bunch of people were going to be losing their lifeline to, well, food. And here we are. And what is also amusing, Uncle Warren, when I was poking around looking for references, I went to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's website yesterday to get more details on this. And sure enough, I found that the U.S. Department of Agriculture has not updated its site. They're still working on a handbook that with guidance to the new regulations.
That's shocking.
This is an absolute freaking clown show, and make no mistake.
Well, yeah, you had last year with the shutting down of SNAP during the government shutdown.
Yeah.
And they just basically kicked the can down the road to where we are now. So what are some of the restrictions?
Well, if you can pull up, I don't know if you've seen, there's a source in there from MSN, which was the best thing I could find that was not behind a paywall. But essentially what's happened is that they're making it much more difficult for people who are considered to be able-bodied adults to qualify for benefits if they are not, for example, meeting certain work and or training requirements. So you're expected to be working or in a work program for at least 80 hours per month. And that means anybody ages 18 through 65 without dependents must be doing this. It also, if you are a parent or a household member and you have a dependent child and that child is 14 or older, you also have to meet those work requirements. Previously, if the child was 18 or younger, children under 18, you didn't have to meet the work requirements. It used to be that if you were a veteran, or if you were homeless, or if you were a young adult who had recently aged out of the foster care system, you could receive benefits without having to meet the work and training requirements. So that's all changed. And of course, there are also states where there's not a lot of work opportunities. So you could apply for a waiver to extend the amount of time you could receive food benefits. If you were in an area with high unemployment, it's also really restricted that. And so there's just a bunch of different things that have happened here. And I want to get into the reasons for this. And as Chuck has brought up, these benefits are not really our tax dollars. It's funded by federal money. And also I want to point out that this SNAP program, which I think is probably one of the most efficient ways of getting food to people, because it relies on existing supply chains and logistics. It doesn't require a separate channel for getting food to people. People receive benefits which can be as low as, I want to say, $13 a month. It's not a lot of money on an EBT card. On a card, they can take that to any store that accepts that accepts SNAP, that accepts the EBT, and they're buying the same food as everybody else. So food manufacturers are benefiting. Supply chain workers are benefiting. The store owners and shareholders are benefiting. And these folks are getting their food. They're not doing anything different really to get their food than anybody who's not receiving these benefits. It's incredibly efficient, and it benefits the economy. In fact, the Department of Agriculture manages this program. It's not Health and Human Services. It's the Department of Agriculture, because one of the reasons why it was established was to support the American farmer. And so, again, this is a well understood, streamlined program that benefits the public and the private sectors, of course, and as well as individuals. So the fact that they're messing around with this is just plain cruelty. I think Chuck also said that as well. This is at the point of just plain cruelty. You have an efficient system that works well, that benefits people. It benefits big business. Big business benefits from this. And they're putting these restrictions into place. And the response that you hear from people is, well, people should have to work. People shouldn't expect to be freeloaders. And many people who are on SNAP are children, they are elderly, they are disabled, or they are, in fact, also working. So I think that is a critical thing to keep in mind. For those who aren't, there may be some very good reasons for that. One, that they cannot find a job. They might be homeless. They may be struggling with addiction. There are things that are preventing them from having employment. And now these folks are being, again, cast to the wind, which puts an additional strain on food banks or food charities, soup kitchens. And it also, things like, for example, that people who don't have homes, people who are homeless, are now required to make the same work requirements. Well, that can be difficult if you don't have a home. You don't know where you're sleeping night to night. Showing up on time can be very difficult. Also, for people who are trying to get into housing, having food stamps, having SNAP benefits can be very helpful. You can say, look, I don't have any money, but I'll bring my own food.
Yeah.
And I can feed myself, and that won't be a burden that way. So they're taking that away from these folks as well. And again, if you've got a parent who's got children, that's 80 hours a month. That's roughly 20 hours a week. That's not always easy. It's not always easy. You're not giving these folks public transportation to get to these work sites. The other problem with these make work situations where people are being forced, these training programs can be, some of them are good, some of them are not. Some of these work sites, they're going in, they're volunteering, they're performing this additional labor. That does not motivate employers. And yes, not-for-profits and charities are employers. They do employ people. It doesn't motivate them to create good-paying jobs. If they can they can ship in desperate people who they can treat however they want to do this, so that they can get some money, so they can buy, they can buy canned beans for themselves. This is plain cruelty. This is plain cruelty. It is not benefiting anybody, but it is a way to distract people who are angry, because I think you have so many people in this country who get off on watching other people suffer. They're suffering, and instead of turning around and say, let's organize and take what we're owed, they instead want to just punch down. And so this is what this is. Head on a swivel, distraction. See, we're poking at these folks.
Yeah, it definitely is a distraction from all the heinous things that the government is doing otherwise, especially like funding ICE billions and billions of dollars that they don't need. So the unhoused people who are no longer exempt, I mean, there are working unhoused people, but it's very
many
rare.
Of them.
It's very rare that they do have jobs and are homeless. A lot of times it's because maybe they just lost their home, but they still have a job for whatever reason. And the fact that veterans are being included in this too is that's another spit in the face for veterans as it is. I was talking to my buddy Ed yesterday about the Veterans Administration and how there's such a huge backlog of veterans trying to get their health benefits, right? It's like the military is hurry up and wait. My dad used to always say when he was in the Navy, but it's but when it comes to when you're done with the military, they couldn't care less what happens to their veterans. A lot of these veterans are also unhoused people, and are just, now you're just taking the one thing away from them that's literally keeping them alive on the streets. It's like, well, you got to work. It's like, well, I worked for you, right? And it goes back to the fact that federal tax dollars don't pay for this stuff. This isn't from your tax dollars. This is why we're able to have $1.5 trillion military without even any discussion about, oh, we got to have that. That's a must pass. We must pass that. Do you have to have $1.5 trillion? And if you can't afford $1.5 trillion for your military, you can definitely have enough money to pay to help your own people instead of murdering them on the streets,
or sending them to be murdered, or to murder others and then get murdered in return, or come back with PTSD or missing limbs. And again, you've got veterans, who are there. Maybe they're in, they've got families. They're trying to keep that family together. And if they are having trouble holding a job or finding a job, again, those SNAP benefits can be the one thing that keeps that family together, and it's a source of provision for that family. And now that's being taken away, and people are going to be forced to scramble more. And again, people can't always get there. If you're living in a rural community, if you're living in a far-flung suburb, these training programs, these make work programs, aren't necessarily going to be convenient. And who's going to pay to take care of your kids?
Mm-hmm.
Or an elderly parent? Let's say you're a caregiver. This is just plain cruelty. And again, this is, if you look at the way SNAP operates, it is so effective. It is so efficient.
Right. It seems like with that and Medicare for All, which is also saves money in the long run too. It seems like the government, the people who talk about government waste, they sure don't talk about these ways of saving money like this. It's very, very peculiar how that works. Well, thank you for that, Lainey. And we're gonna head to the recurring tide, stories we've been looking at and updating here. Of course, we were talking earlier about the boat strikes. you know, how those kind of gotten out of the press for a while. Well, guess what? They're back in it, folks. U.S. military kills 2 in latest boat strike targeting vessel in Eastern Pacific Ocean. So the U.S. has killed at least 121 people in this bombing campaign against drug dealers. The air quotes, very, very prominent there. The U.S. military announced on Monday that its forces blew up another boat in the Eastern Pacific Ocean, marking the 3rd U.S. strike this year against small vessels allegedly running drugs in the waters of Latin America. U.S. Southern Command said the attack killed 2, quote, narco-terrorists, a term the Trump administration uses to describe extrajudicial executions at sea for an alleged crime that doesn't receive the death penalty in the United States. And even then, it's like, even when they have survivors, they just go ahead and kill them. Because that's not hyperbole. That's happened before.
Yeah.
The command also said that one person survived the attack and that it immediately notified U.S. Coast Guard to activate the search and rescue system for the survivor, I guess so they could kill him. As usual, the command offered no evidence to back up its claim that the boat was carrying drugs, something the Trump administration has never done for any of the strikes. According to antiwar.com's count, that's the outfit here. The strike brings the total number of boats, as we said, it has destroyed in the bombing campaign that started in early September to 39, and the number of people executed to 121. Air Wars, which takes into account people who survived the initial attack but are presumed to have died, has recorded a total of 130 deaths. All the people killed are recorded as civilians since they are non-combatants and posed no threat to the U.S. military at the time of the attacks. These were just boats. I don't think they had any weapons on them. Or if they did, the military is not saying. The bombing campaign against boats began on September 2nd last year with an attack in the Caribbean near the coast of Venezuela. And at the end of October, the campaign expanded into the Eastern Pacific Ocean, where now the majority of strikes have been launched. So we're back at this again. Look, say we're killing drug dealers. Well, how do you know they're drug dealers? They're narco terrorists. Well, how do you know they're narco terrorists? Reasons, stuff, things. Yeah. So, you know, that's probably another reason why they think the U.S. is so corrupt. And another reason why that number should have been way, way lower than it is. You know, I don't know who this benefits, really, right? Is this some sort of way to make Republicans look like they're fighting, you know, tough on crime? Because that's backfiring here with people getting, like, citizens getting murdered in the streets of Minnesota. You know, so if they're trying to boost their profile for the midterms come November, this ain't cutting it.
I'm beginning to wonder if they're just people, and the people who are doing this just like to watch things blow up, including human bodies.
Sadists, sure. I mean, you know, all the stuff that we're finding out in the all the stuff we're finding out in the Jeffrey Epstein files about some of these people. It's like, you know, this is kind of par for the course, which, you know, unless we actually get out in the streets, not these parades, get out in the streets and shut things down for real, they're going to probably keep doing this. So here, back here in Chicago, homelessness fell. That's good, but the real count is much higher. So the number of unhoused people in Chicago has declined over the last decade, but advocates worry federal policies could reverse that trajectory. Oh, federal policies? Wow, they always help. The big picture, a new report from the Chicago Coalition to End Homelessness, the CCH, details how the federal government's definition of people experiencing homelessness greatly underestimates the number, leading to less funding and fewer resources. So, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development defines homelessness as people living in shelters, on the street, and in places not meant for habitation, while CCH says a more accurate description includes anyone without regular adequate housing, such as sleeping on someone's couch or doubling up. Many government agencies, both federal and local, also assess people experiencing homelessness through a point-in-time count, which is only one night counting unhoused people visibly on the streets or shelters. Axios reached out to Housing and Urban Development to learn why it doesn't count people doubled up, but they did not provide a response. Surprise, surprise. CCH estimates that 58,625 people experienced homelessness in Chicago in 2024. Nearly 20,000 of those people stay in shelters or on the streets, with more than 39,000 doubled up. Black people overwhelmingly represent the demographic experiencing homelessness, more than 12,000 on the streets and more than 20,000 doubled up. The next highest group is Latinos, about 2,600 in shelters or on the streets, and about 12,700 doubled up. Compared to the general Illinois population, people experiencing homelessness disproportionately died in outdoor or in other informal settings, such as abandoned buildings, 19.6% versus 0.6%, with 89 deaths occurring on public transportation, according to a recent Illinois Department of Public Health report. Cold exposure was a contributing cause of death for 112 people experiencing homelessness, with an additional 6,930 cold injuries treated in the hospital setting from 2017 to 2023. Congress last week passed a spending bill that appropriated $7.2 billion more to HUD than its funding in 2025. Housing advocates say the increase is a good sign, but some fear, based on past funding stops and stalls by the Trump administration, that appropriating funds is not the same as delivering. That's true. Are they going to change conditions of your program overnight and then change their minds again? That's according to Bob Palmer, policy director of the nonprofit Housing Action Illinois. A lot of rhetoric that surrounds people who are experiencing homelessness is that we deserve it. Evie Alexander, a CCH board member, said at a recent event about the organization's report, "I didn't deserve to have to continue to go through homelessness for a prolonged period, which could have been avoided had I been eligible for a program that would have helped me early on." I encourage policymakers to think about the concept of a home and what having a home really means. Yeah, it's all smoke and mirrors, right? They'll say, oh, well, the homeless numbers are down, but yeah, if you don't own a home, if you're not able to rent, yeah, then technically you are homeless as well, and they don't take that into account.
Yeah, and I think that they, again, they're looking at street corners or shelters. What about people who are sleeping in cars or vans or in their offices? Some people, if they're working, and many people who are homeless do work at least part-time, they may be sleeping at their job, and they don't count for couch surfing or doubling up. And so, I brought in this article because even though it's about Chicago, it applies everywhere else. The other places have the same mechanisms that people are using to try and find some place that's warm and safe to sleep. It is, I think, being undercounted. There's also people who have very insecure housing. There are people who may be staying with a friend or family member, and technically, yeah, they can be there, but there may be abuse going on. There may be somebody who has a severe mental illness where it's not a safe place to be, and there are going to be nights when they cannot be there. It's just, I don't think that they're really accounting for how so many people are not visibly homeless, but they do not really have an address a place they can call home. They don't really have a fixed address. They don't have a place where they can store their belongings during the day. And until the people who are supposed to be tracking this sort of thing effectively can acknowledge these situations and try and find ways to track that, a lot of these problems will not be made visible.
Yeah, and
as we were talking about earlier, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that, a lot of this has to do with, when they say government waste, right? So we can't be funding housing and urban development that much if the homelessness is low. But it's like, well, you're not really tracking it right, and that may be by design too.
Yeah, and I think it is by design. It absolutely is by design. It's like they're, are they looking at how many people who are receiving SNAP benefits are caring for a family member who is not under 14 and who may not qualify necessarily as disabled, but cannot be left alone. I mean, they're not considering the many dimensions of human behavior and human circumstances. And nobody's getting the help. Many people are not getting the help they need.
No, exactly. And once again, that's they're trying to sugarcoat this and make it sound like, oh, look, see, these numbers are going down, but it's really not happening. We had talked about AI and how scary AI can be as far as like from a systemic kind of point of view where it affects communities and whatnot, right? So Alphabet CEO says AI capacity is what keeps us up at night as power, land, and supply chain limits test growth. And a lot of these things are growing very, very fast. So on Wednesday during Alphabet's fourth quarter earnings call, CEO Sundar Pichai said surging AI demand has become the company's biggest near-term challenge. Responding to an analyst's question about what concerns leadership most at this stage of Google's evolution, he said the company's long-standing AI-first strategy is now colliding with real-world constraints. Oh, you think?
Imagine that.
Yeah. People having super high utility bills and because of these data centers. What keeps us up at night? We've been on this AI first trajectory for over a decade, he said, pointing to years of investments in custom chips like tensor processing units or TPUs. However, he added that the current moment presents a unique challenge. The top question is definitely around capacity, he said. All constraints, be it power, land, supply chain constraints. How do you ramp up to meet this extraordinary demand for this moment? You scare the hell out of people and take their land. No. So he said Google is spending significant time ensuring it can scale infrastructure responsibly while maintaining efficiency, a balancing act as data center expansion becomes more complex and expensive. The comments reflect a broader industry struggle as tech giants race to deploy AI models that require massive computing resources. Power availability, data center locations, and equipment sourcing have increasingly become limiting factors for growth across the sector. He said the company is focused on making the right long-term investments without sacrificing operational discipline. Get our investments right for the long term and do it all in a way that we are driving efficiencies and doing it in a world-class way, he said, noting that this is where much of the attention is currently focused. So Alphabet posted fourth quarter revenue of $113.83 billion, topping the street's consensus estimate of $111.31 billion, according to Benzinga Pro Data. Revenue rose 18% from a year earlier, supported by double-digit growth across all business segments. Looking ahead, the company said 2026 capital expenditures are expected to range between $175 billion and $185 billion, with a bulk of spending aimed at expanding AI computing capacity, strengthening technical infrastructure, and supporting cloud growth. They're not stupid. They saw this coming, right? They knew that they knew they were going to have to build these big ass data centers and they were going to have to put them somewhere, right? And so now they're trying to sneak into these communities, and these communities are not having it. They're standing up to them and saying, no, we don't want higher utility bills. We don't want our water being taken away from us. To a smaller degree, I remember as an IT guy who builds computers that these AI models that use various specifically video cards and chips, right? CPU chips. Whereas they were kind of pricey in the past and now have outpriced people trying to build their own computers. Like I said, that's a very small segment of it, but that's just another example of how these data centers affect other areas of the economy too, right? So a lot of these independent IT people who are doing this kind of work are telling they're telling their customers, look, we're gonna have to jack these prices up if you want to upgrade your computer setups for whatever you're doing. It's going to cost money because of these guys.
Yeah, I read this and I just said, I mean, on one hand I was disgusted, and the other hand I was laughing when I read that. It's just like, yeah, we might have some problems here. Yeah, sure do.
Where's that long range forecasting that these companies are so known for, right? I mean, like I said, they're not stupid. They knew this was happening, but now I guess they didn't expect the backlash that they got from this. They thought people, oh, AI, everybody will love AI. That means they'll love they won't care if they're, these data centers are in there. But then once it starts affecting people's bottom line, they're like, whoa, I don't need AI that bad or at all if you're going to keep doing that shit.
Yeah. So here we are. And then, what happens, you've got companies who have been laying off workers left and right. AI can do it. And then when there's a bottleneck someplace and all their plans, well, what happened to all of our workers? Well,
didn't you tell them to learn how to code? Well, they learned how to code, but then the AI could code better, and now they're out of a job again. So
yeah, and they can't get SNAP benefits because they can't find a job.
Yeah, it all comes together, right? Talking about trust in government and whatnot, and the lack thereof. Lying about Cuba seems to be in vogue these days. As reporting says, Marco Rubio, aka the Aquaman, deliberately lying to Trump about U.S.-Cuba talks. How shocking. So U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has long sought regime change in Cuba, and new reporting from Drop Site News on Monday suggested he may be intentionally misrepresenting the Trump administration's current policy in the communist country to achieve his goal. The outlet reported that based on the accounts of 5 Cuban and U.S. officials who spoke on condition of anonymity, the deal that Trump has said is likely to be finalized soon is not being pursued in any high-level official diplomatic discussions. Soon after issuing an executive order that labeled Cuba an extraordinary threat, accused it of harboring terrorists and threatened other countries with sanctions if they provided oil to the Cuban government, Trump said his administration is talking to the people from Cuba, the highest people in Cuba, to see what happens. In other words, he's talking to people in Miami. He's not talking to who are Cubans, former Cubans. Yeah. He's talking to them, but he's not talking to actual Cubans. But one senior White House official explained to Drop Site that he's saying that because that's what Marco is telling him. If the public and the president himself believe that high-level negotiations are taking place in a few weeks or months, Rubio will be able to claim that the talks were futile because of Cuban intransigence. I've messed that word up. I'm sorry. I'm a little under the weather. I can barely read A, N, and the.
It's a difficult word.
Intransigence. That word. Drop Site reported asserting that Rubio is deliberately blocking Trump from the talks and misleading him. A lie like the one Drop Site sources alleged said reporter Ryan Grimm would be a defining scandal in any other administration. That's true. The idea that talks are taking place has been accepted as fact in Washington, D.C., reported the outlet, which pointed to Politico's recent reporting that said the son of former Cuban President Raul Castro traveled to Mexico for talks with the Central Intelligence Agency. Dun, dun, dun. Politico's article was sourced to a Cuban dissident blogger and a single fantastical Facebook post made by a Spain-based Cuban journalist. Drop site noted that while Trump is currently threatening Cuba's economy and the lives and livelihoods of millions of people with an oil blockade, having cut off the Venezuelan oil supply to the island after ordering an invasion of the South American country over a month ago and stealing their leader, he doesn't appear to be driven by an ideological confrontation with Cuba, and in fact holds potential financial interests in normalizing relations with the country because he holds a registered trademark for a Trump property in Havana. How about that? Rubio, whose family immigrated to the U.S. from Cuba before the Cuban Revolution, but didn't flee Fidel Castro's takeover, as he claimed early on in his political career, another lie, has long called for regime change in the country. The U.S. State Department refuted the accounts of drop site's 5 sources and told the outlet that diplomatic talks, which Cuban leaders have said they are entirely open to holding, are taking place, but did not provide evidence or details. That seems to be the common theme. Did not provide evidence or details. As the president stated, we are talking to Cuba, whose leaders should make a deal. Cuba is a failing nation whose rulers have had a major setback with a loss of support from Venezuela and with Mexico ceasing to send them oil, the State Department press office said. That claim contradicted a comment from Carlos Fernandez de Cosio, Cuba's deputy minister of foreign affairs, who told CNN last week that the government has had some exchanges of messages with the White House. We cannot say we have set a bilateral dialogue at this moment, he said. Drop Site News' reporting indicates, said Cuban American organizer and New York City Council candidate Danny Valdez, that Marco Rubio is personally overseeing the starvation of an entire nation, while Cuban leaders want dialogue and a way forward without surrendering their sovereignty. And the reason why Cuba is a failed state is because a 60-year blockade by the United States. That's the reason why they still have cars that are from the 1950s that they keep repairing over and over down there because they can't get anything new in. So it's sure, you can say somebody is weak if you have them tied up the whole time, right? But yeah, why don't you untie them and see what happens?
There's a thought.
Yeah. You know, it's hello. This is,
and here's another state that's being interfered with.
Yeah, I don't know. It went from dark mode to light mode. I don't know what happened there, but you know, screw it. We'll go for it. So Americans are divided on next steps for the U.S. in Venezuela. Like you said, they stole their president. They did. They picked him up.
I know. I mean,
thank you very much.
In the middle of the night, you know.
Yeah, like anti-Santa Claus. He steals things. Americans are split over how involved the U.S. should be in governing Venezuela and whether U.S. companies should have access to the country's oil reserves, according to a new Pew Research Center survey. This comes after the U.S. military stole Nicolas Maduro in early January. I'm not gonna sugarcoat. That's what happens. Americans have also have relatively low confidence in Trump to make wise decisions. You could probably just end the sentence right there.
Yeah, just right there. There was no reason for the rest of it.
Yeah, I know. About U.S. policy toward Venezuela. Republicans and Democrats, including those who lean toward each party, have sharply different views on all these questions. So we go here. Americans have relatively low confidence in Trump on Venezuela if you want U.S. highly involved in governance. So a percentage who are either very confident, somewhat confident, not too confident, not confident at all, that President Trump can make wise decisions when it comes to U.S. policy toward Venezuela. Only 19% confident. That number is probably way too high. Somewhat confident at 24%, not too confident at 20%, and not at all confident at 36%. So not too confident and not at all confident, making the majority of people polled here. So the percentage who say the U.S. should be extremely involved, somewhat, or not at all involved in how Venezuela is governed over the next several months. So 21% very involved, somewhat involved, 32%, and not at all, 45%. The survey conducted January 20th through the 26th among 8,512 adults finds that 44% of U.S. adults say they are very these are the numbers we just said there. However, most Republicans and Republican-leaning independents, 81%, are confident in Trump's handling of Venezuela policy, compared with just 10% of Democrats and Democratic leaders. Yeah, well, when you believe the lies, of course, without any proof, obviously, that's an easy one to say. Yeah, he's doing a great job there. Overall, 45% of Americans say the U.S. should be not to or not at all involved in Venezuela's governance over the next several months. Another 32% say the U.S. should be somewhat involved, while 21% say it should be extremely or very, very involved. 77% of Republicans are more than twice as likely as Democrats, 32%, to say the U.S. should be at least somewhat involved in how Venezuela is governed over the coming months, and 36% of Republicans say the U.S. should be extremely or very involved, compared with just 7% of Democrats. And then the access to Venezuela's oil. Here we go. So the percentage who oppose or favor giving U.S. companies access to Venezuela's oil, strongly oppose only 25%, somewhat oppose at 15%, somewhat favor at 22%, and strongly favor at 15%. The Republicans who are leaning in favor at about 62%, and Democrats in favor at only 16%, with roughly the same amount as being opposed as the Republicans are being strongly in favor of it. So yeah, and so the numbers go on here. It just seems like roughly 6 in 10 Republicans favor giving U.S. companies access to Venezuela's oil. An identical share of Democrats oppose this. So it seems very very cut and dried that Republic. And then, now these are polls, right? What people say and what people do are two different things. Sure. But I mean, Republicans have never been shy about saying, yeah, we want that oil. Let's go get it. But you know, that if I don't think they wanted it to be this way. I think they were thinking, you know, maybe like there'll be some sort of uprising in the country and then they'll take out Maduro. But now we have to go in and steal them. And that's the only way we get this done. And I don't know if that's a precedent that the Republicans are comfortable with. They might be, but you know, the real ones probably not so much.
Well, I think it's just always fascinating to me that if we were to take on ourselves as individuals, Uncle Warren, any of these behaviors, we'd be in prison. If we kidnap somebody, we go to prison. If we say to somebody, give us what you have, your property, or we're going to bomb you or try and starve you out, we would be in prison. If we go ahead and kill somebody without, and it's not in self-defense, we go to prison. But when a government does this, well, I guess that's just foreign policy.
Yeah, I mean, they are literally breaking international law, but the United States has shown time and time again they've thumbed their nose to international law, and this is no exception for sure. So again, you know, how long are we going to put up with it? Really depends on the people and what they want to do. But you know, we can talk and talk all we want, but until some action actually happens, the shit is going to keep happening. So this is a good story here. Let's get to the press pool. Let's dip our toes in the press pool as student journalists push back as censorship tightens on campus, right? So on my shows last year, I've talked about like all these college campuses that have been cracking down on protests, particularly against Israel. And the journalists, in fact, have been cracked down as well. So student journalists play a critical role, not just in reporting on their high school or college campuses, but on the broader surrounding communities. From rural towns to cities where professional local newsrooms have been diminished or destroyed, student presses may be one of the few credible sources of information left standing. According to the Pew Research Center, as of 2023, 1 in 10 state capitol reporters were student journalists. And that lends to the rise of independent journalism too, as well. That's outside the mainstream media, and even outside some of these local outfits. But student press outlets have struggled, like all local news media, just to keep the lights on, and they face some troubling new challenges. So last November, Sophia Bangura, a student reporter at WUVA News, a student-run independent media organization at the University of Virginia, was fired for insubordination after asking some tough questions of the interim university president during an in-person interview. Insubordination. How dare you ask questions?
How dare you do your job?
As reported by Katie Ratliff at Seville.com. She was fired by WUVA's president and editor-in-chief, who is also part of the university's media relations team. Ooh, talk about bad media relations. In 2025, the Department of Education, newly minted under the second Trump administration, targeted dozens of colleges and universities with investigations into their diversity, equity, and inclusion, the artists formerly known as DEI programs, according to reporting by the AP's Colin Binkley. DEI was at the center of a case at the University of Alabama where 2 student-run publications were shuttered. Alice, a magazine for undergraduate women, and 1956, a magazine focused on the Black undergraduate community. Morgan State University in Maryland drew scrutiny for a new campus-wide media policy that restricts how student journalists may approach administrative or faculty sources or film on campus. And yet, despite these impediments and what seems to be eroding relationships between schools and student media, student journalists soldier on, as well they should. For student presses in Indiana, free press protections were top of mind in 2025. This outfit, EMP, spoke with Chris Cundiff, a local legal initiative attorney covering Indiana for the Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press, about the Indiana Daily Student, representing the editors-in-chief. Cundiff sent a letter to Indiana University objecting to the administration's firing of IDS's advisor, student media director Jim Rodenbush, and the university's mandate that print editions distributed on campus must not contain news, but instead carry promotional content for the university. Right? Just propaganda, please. Only propaganda. While IDS is editorially independent, its home is at IU's media school. These young journalists are there. They want to do this work. They're compassionate about it. That is important, especially now. I try not to be doom and gloom. Well, we all try not to be doom and gloom, but the doom and gloom.
We're trying really hard.
Yeah, it just slaps you in the face like a fish. But it's a concerning time for people not only working in journalism, but those who are considering going into the field, he said. On October 30th, Indiana University reversed course on its mandate. It was the same day Rodenbush filed suit against the university. Yeah, funny how that works. Alleging IU had violated his right to free speech and due process. The university subsequently convened a student media task force. Oh, those task forces, with members of the newsroom, the administration, and faculty. Published by the Purdue Student Publishing Foundation, the Purdue Exponent is a student-run newsroom independent of Purdue University. Okay, since 1889, it published under that name. But in 2025, Purdue University demanded that the paper delete Purdue from its name and relinquish its PurdueExponent.org URL. Olivia Mapes started working for the paper her freshman year and is now in her second semester as editor-in-chief. When she and CEO, publisher, and news advisor Kyle Charters spoke with EMP in January, she just returned to her desk after spending the morning reporting on the local fire station. Her enthusiasm was palpable as she recounted the experience of talking to the firefighters and seeing the inside of their emergency vehicles. When she graduates, Mapes plans to continue working in local news. Yeah, local news is great. Just be careful which outlets you actually work for, because a lot of these TV stations, radio stations, and papers are owned by giant conglomerates that really don't want free speech, if you know what I mean. At least not your kind of free speech there, telling the truth there. Yeah, it's like you talked about when you were talking about public broadcasting, right? When they were when NPR or was the Corporation for Public Broadcasting had been cut, decimated, and now they have to depend on contributors mostly, if not everything. And so do these students too, especially when they get cut off from their universities like that, because they're journalists. For one thing, they're not propagandists, they're not PR people, and a lot of these colleges want them to be that.
Which is outrageous, given that many of them are in school preparing for media and journalism careers. And their educators, the people who they are paying good money, going into debt in some cases, they're paying good money going into debt to the very people who are trying to kneecap them.
It's like, we're to teach you how to be a journalist, but don't you do that journalism stuff.
Don't you do that. And it is truly distressing. And it was actually touched on in the article, and many universities and colleges are in rural, semi-rural areas where they've really been cut off from a lot of media resources. Small town newspapers and radio stations and TV stations going by the wayside. So in some cases, as they point out, it's the work of those student journalists, whether on their radio or their local cable television or on in their student newspapers and websites, that are doing this work of journalism. And that may be the one source of local reporting that community has. And these kids are being cut off there as well, because they're in terror of the Department of Education. This is incredibly disturbing. It's incredibly disturbing to watch these academics just fold like accordions.
Right. Well, and a lot of these schools are being threatened to have their funding taken away. And and it's extortion, really.
Yeah, it is
by the government.
Again, something else that would put us in prison, Uncle Warren, but it's apparently domestic policy in this case.
Right. I mean, when it comes to like school newspapers and stuff like that, this didn't used to be a problem. I mean, you maybe had some colleges that would kind of like, hey, maybe you need to tone it down a little bit in the past if it was a really sensitive subject. And even then, that was kind of rare. But now, when you talk about pulling federal funding from the government, then they're like, whoa,
insubordination for asking a university administrator. Yeah, I mean, what the heck? It is the job of a journalist to ask questions.
That's what I've heard all the times. I've worked with a lot of journalists, and the who, what, when, where, and how and why. That was always a staple. And when I'm sorry if you don't like the questions, maybe you should have better answers for those questions, because those answers. I mean, those questions need to be asked over and over again. So clowns to the left of us and clowns to the right. Here we are, stuck in the middle with this alien head snake guy, Rick Scott out of Florida. This is some fun stuff here. So MAGA senator melts down with cruel threat against the U.S. Olympians, his own peoples. There he is, right there. Looks like a Harry Potter villain, doesn't he?
A little bit.
Florida Senator Rick Scott raged that U.S. athletes at the Olympics who criticize representing their country should be stripped of their uniforms. Even though the United States doesn't pay them, Anyway. His post Monday was the latest demand from MAGA lawmakers and influencers who were losing it over athletes on Team USA, voicing disapproval of their home country on the world stage as they compete in Italy. Rick Scott's like, don't you know you're supposed to be propagandists for your country? What the hell's wrong with you? Scott did not specify who exactly had ticked him off, but his message was clear. Representing the United States, he's a snake, a beacon for freedom and democracy at the Olympics is an honor. Anyone who feels otherwise should be stripped of their USA Olympic uniform, Scott wrote on X with his video. There he is. Yikes. What the hell? That it's like if you put a sheet of paper next to his face, it would look tan. It comes as multiple U.S. athletes have spoken out about the challenges of representing the U.S. as the country grapples with unrest, including ICE violence and killings on the street. Freestyle skier Chris Lillis referenced ICE and said he was heartbroken over what's happening in the U.S. And that's very mild to say you're heartbroken over what's happening. You should be outraged. You should be, just tearing up stuff. Figure skater Amber Glenn spoke out about the LGBTQ plus community facing a hard time under Trump. Skier Hunter Hess told reporters representing the U.S. brings up mixed emotions, and just because he's wearing the U.S. flag does not mean he represents everything that's going on in the U.S. Any person who goes to the Olympics to represent the United States and then says they don't want to represent the United States should be immediately stripped of their Olympic uniform, Scott declared in his video as he was shedding his skin. He wasn't the only MAGA diehard to whine about members of Team USA. Florida, it's always Florida. Florida Congressman Byron Donalds blasted Hess for disavowing what was happening in the U.S. with a post on the tweeters. You chose to wear our flag. You chose to represent our country. You chose to compete at the Olympics. Donalds wrote, if that's too hard for you, then go home. Some things are bigger than politics. You just don't get it. Well, well, he's right. Some things are bigger than politics. I don't think he gets it.
Yeah.
Trump also raged at Hess as a real loser in his Truth Social post Sunday, in which he said if he didn't want to represent the U.S., he shouldn't have tried out for the team. U.S. athletes who criticized the situation in the States were also met with fierce backlash from Trump's MAGA supporters who sounded off on social media, even as the U.S. begins raking in medals. Some called for Hess to be disqualified for his comments made during a press conference. Pro-Trump wrestler Jake Paul chimed in with what he claimed was from all true Americans, writing, if you don't want to represent this country, go live somewhere else. Right-wing media personality Megyn Kelly ranted that it was bullshit for athletes to go overseas representing America, wearing an American uniform in a fierce competition against other countries, some with the worst human rights records on earth, and bashed the U.S. But critics were quick to push back that it was athletes' First Amendment right to speak out, while others noted that Trump had done something similar by slamming his own country while traveling abroad. Oh dear. Yeah, so if we wanted to actually send people that represented the United States, they would be on those little scooters that you see at the Target. You would see people with fairly obese and ignorant. Yeah, that's who you want at the Olympics. If you want true representation of the United States in its current form, there you go.
There you go. I'm reading this and I'm saying, these folks really do not get that it is baked into our Constitution, the right to criticize the government.
Right.
It's baked in.
We've had protests during Olympics by Americans in the past, right?
Yeah. And, here it is. And this is acknowledged and has long been acknowledged. And I remember, it was, I want to say, and I'll say this from Mike Pence. I don't know what persuaded him to become vice president to Donald Trump the first time around. But when he was at a production of Hamilton with one of his kids soon after the election, he was booed by the audience, and he basically said to his kid, "Hey, this is what America is. We have a right to do this."
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the cast confronted him and said, "Look, we hope you understand. You can show us respect. As well." And that happened, and he sat through it. He handled it with dignity. Again, I'm not a Mike Pence fan, but he understood it. And if he can understand it, other people can understand it as well. And this is a disgrace as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
if somebody's talking like this, Rick Scott is speaking like this. Again, we have an absolute right to criticize this government. That's our job.
Right. Yeah. You're supposed that is the epitome of the American way, to be able to criticize your own government and have the freedom to do that. And it wasn't like these were scathing, criticisms of the United States. There's some people saying they were disappointed that they felt bad, but they were keeping it real, but at the same time they were keeping it civil too. And then you see these snake oil salespeople come out and say, "Oh, well, if you don't want it," of course they want to represent America, but guess what, assholes? You're not the America they're representing. They're representing the actual people of America who have been lied to and have been propagandized to the hilt. And, because you're not, pushing the company line, as it were, and you're actually saying what's on your mind, it's really hypocritical for people, especially with these constitutional conservatives who are all about the Second Amendment, but seem to forget there's a reason why it's the Second Amendment and not the First Amendment, because the First Amendment is about free speech, and they're now, only certain speech should be free in their eyes is what it comes down to. Oh, these clowns, right? They're assholes. I can't stand hypocrites. I really can't. It's like, if you're going to back something, back it all the way. And don't say like you're some sort of American patriot or something when you only partially observe the Constitution and don't take all of it as a whole like that. So speaking of Indiana, with Mike Pence there, I had no idea this was a thing at the Indy 500, the race there. In our finally segment here. So Oscar Mayer's Wienermobile race is coming back to the Indy 500. So look at this. Would you drive a vehicle? This thing looks futuristic. Look at this. You got this big bubble up here. I would drive.
I think Dr. Freud would have something to say about it.
Well, that's because Dr. Freud doesn't have good taste in cars. He's always just looking at pee-pees and wee-wees. But look at this. This is like something out of a 1970s futuristic movie, right?
It does.
And there's multiple too. So the Wienermobiles are coming back for a bite at the Brickyard in May, giving them another chance to relish the spotlight of racing's biggest weekend. Oscar Mayer announced Sunday all 6 of its famed street-ready vehicles will compete for the second straight year on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway's historic 2.5-mile oval. The Weenie 500 is scheduled for May 22nd during the track's annual Carburation Day festivals. Last year's race was such a hit, organizers wanted to give fans a second round to savor the flavor of a lighthearted competition just 2 days before IndyCar's marquee race, the Indy 500. The presentation will have a familiar look for fans who watched last year's inaugural race. Each Wienermobile will feature toppings representing an American regional favorite, while carrying custom decals, or carrying custom decals. That's probably a typo there. Drivers will don hot dogger racing suits while the iconic Wiener song plays and the champ drives into Wiener's circle. Slaw Dog, which represents the Southeast, will try to prove it is beefy enough to defend last year's crown. 4 of the regional favorites are also expected to return. That would be Chai Dog. I guess that's from Chicago. New York dog, a chili dog from the south, and Seattle dog from the northwest. There you go, in case you missed it there. No hot dogging at the track, folks. We want to keep it safe. Let me ask you this, because they said the various toppings, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about an Italian sausage dog. I'm talking about a regular ass hot dog.
Yeah.
Is it okay to put ketchup on a regular hot dog?
Not in Chicago.
Why is that?
It interferes with the taste of the sausage.
Now, not sausage. I'm talking about like a regular hot dog, like you get, like, you know,
it's like, a sausage. A hot dog is a sausage.
But is it though? I mean, it kind of is, but it doesn't taste like it's not a spicy sausage, which I can understand. You don't want ketchup on a spicy sausage, but just I mean, hot dogs ain't exactly bursting with flavor. You know what I mean? Some of them are okay, but sometimes you need that little bit of extra ketchup on there. It's kind of weird. Or maybe there could be just some sort of regional hate towards ketchup in general.
We put it on our fries, but yeah.
Oh, you'll put it on your fries, but you won't put it on a regular hot dog. That's interesting to say. And Chuck, who's not even from this planet, chiming in, saying Laney is correct. What do you know about Chicago, Chuck? Do they have hot dogs in space? I thought you were a pizza guy. You stay out of this. But no, like Italian sausage or something like a kielbasa or something like that. Yeah, nice. Get a nice spicy mustard on there. Ooh, delicious. I love some spicy mustard. Maybe a brown mustard on there. Now I want a hot dog. Because to add to my girth as I grow horizontally here. I guess that's all we got for today, Laney. What you got going on? Anything exciting?
Just getting settled back in from I got here yesterday evening, and just getting settled back in here and looking forward to being back in the thick of things.
Well, it was another fun show. I enjoyed it.
So did I. Great.
I'll be back solo on Friday for Morning Extra at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific time. And then with last week seemed to be a hit. We moved the Secret Show to Friday night. It was on Saturday nights, but now it's on. I like it better on Friday nights. It seemed we had a pretty good turnout last Friday. I hope we have more of the same this week. It's nice to do both shows in one day. It's kind of a chore to put everything together that quickly, but it's nice to have Saturday night off to hang out with pals or watch Svengoolie or whatever, get hammered and run naked through the streets. It's a beautiful time, especially now that we got the warm weather. When it was 4 below or whatever, I was not going to do that, but this Saturday night, definitely. So, so I guess that's it. Like I said, you're watching us on YouTube and Rumble and Facebook and Instagram. We appreciate all of you. We'll be back next week. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Again, great to see you at my party, Uncle Warren, and looking forward to going forward with the Undercurrent and seeing you, of course, on your channel, Extra Bulla.
Yep, and we'll be having some interesting guests coming up on this show too. So keep an eye and an ear out for that when we have them on as well. Otherwise, we're gonna get out of here. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you Friday. But as far as this show, we'll see you next week at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time at those various channels. We'll see you later. Peace.